21 days after he replaced his cold wife, his mother was left alone, waiting for medication, and the new woman was already gone. He didn't understand how everything fell apart that fast, until he opened the refrigerator and saw a laminated chart written in 3 colors. 5:45 a.m., medication. 6:30 p.m., warm room before dinner. Half a banana, not more. For the first time in 3 years, he realized something that hit him harder than anything else. She wasn't cold. She was exhausted from holding his entire life together. And here's the part that changed everything. That chart, she made it in the first month, after reading every medical file, every prescription, every side effect on her own. No one asked her to. No one thanked her. And the moment she walked out, every system she built started collapsing. Missed appointments, wrong medication timing, food that made things worse. And within 3 weeks, his better life turned into something he couldn't control anymore. Before I tell you what happened next, I'm curious. Where are you watching this from? And what time is it for you right now? Comment below because I read every single comment. Rain pressed softly against the windows. The house smelled like medicine, old wood, and a silence that felt heavier than it should. 21 days after Brian left his wife, his mother would sit alone, waiting for medication that never came. But tonight, Monica Carter was still there, still moving, still remembering, still holding everything together. Monica Carter was 32, a black woman with deep brown skin, sharp, intelligent eyes, and a presence that felt controlled rather than soft. She was tall, naturally strong, with shoulders that carried more than they should. Her hair was tied back into a low bun, not styled, not decorative, just practical. Her face wasn't cold. It was tired in a way most people didn't recognize, the kind of tired that didn't show in tears, but in silence. In the kitchen, she sliced a banana, carefully, precisely. Half a banana, not more, not less, because a full banana caused discomfort later. And she was the only one who remembered that. The refrigerator in front of her held a laminated chart, 3 colors, blue for morning, red for afternoon, green for evening. It looked like organization, but it wasn't. It was survival. Behind her, the air purifier hummed. The clock ticked. Every second mattered in Monica's world. 10 minutes late could mean pain. 20 minutes late could mean a bad night. She had learned that the hard way. In the sitting room, Evelyn Carter waited. 67, dark-skinned, short silver hair cut close to her head. Even sitting down, she looked like someone who used to command rooms. Before the stroke, she had been a high school principal, strict, sharp, respected. After the stroke, her body slowed, but her eyes didn't. They still saw everything. They still judged everything. And she hated needing help, especially help she couldn't control. Monica walked in with the tray, water, the pill, half a banana, a small towel under the glass. Everything exactly where it needed to be. "It's time," Monica said. Her voice was calm, flat, not unkind, just efficient. Evelyn glanced at the tray, then at Monica. "You warmed the room," she said. Monica nodded. She had turned the heat on 14 minutes earlier, because Evelyn always got cold before medication. Evelyn took the pill. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Monica didn't expect one. She had stopped expecting gratitude a long time ago, somewhere in year 2. That was when care stopped feeling like love and started feeling like structure, something invisible, something necessary, something no one noticed until it was gone. A figure appeared in the doorway, Brian Carter, tall, broad shoulders, warm brown skin, a neatly trimmed beard that made him look more composed than he actually was. He was the kind of man people liked quickly, confident, easy to talk to, used to things working out. He had lost his father young, and since then, he had developed a quiet habit of avoiding anything that felt too heavy, too emotional, too complicated. He didn't like problems that stayed. He liked problems that disappeared. He leaned against the doorframe, watching Monica, watching her move without smiling, without softness. "You're doing that thing again," he said. Monica didn't turn. "What thing?" "That cold thing. Like you're here, but not really here." The words hung in the air. Monica paused, just for a second. She had slept less than 4 hours the night before, worked all day, then came home, checked blood pressure, refilled medication, adjusted food, stayed awake through pain, and still woke up before 6 a.m. But none of that showed on her face. Only the silence did. Only the distance did. "Her medication window is now," Monica said. "That's why I'm here." Brian exhaled, frustrated. "It's always something. A chart. A pill. A schedule. You act like if you stop for 1 second, everything falls apart." Monica finally looked at him, and for a moment, everything went still, because he had no idea how close he was to the truth. Evelyn watched from her chair, silent, sharp, seeing more than either of them realized. Monica wanted to speak, to explain, to say, "I'm not cold, I'm exhausted. I'm not distant, I'm carrying everything you don't see." But the blanket needed adjusting, the water was at the right temperature, the chart needed updating, and like always, her feelings came last. So she said nothing. Brian stepped away, already irritated by a burden that wasn't his. Monica marked the chart, green ink, evening complete. She steadied the tray in her hands, and for a brief moment, she saw herself in the reflection of the window. Straight back, still face, a woman who looked less like a person and more like a system. And then a thought came, quiet, clear, terrifying. One day, she would stop, and when she did, everything Brian depended on would start collapsing. 3 weeks before everything collapsed, Brian had already started replacing her, and the worst part was, he believed he was upgrading his life. The first time Brian met Chloe, it didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like relief. Her name was Chloe Reynolds, 29, light brown skin with a warm undertone that caught soft gold under evening lights. Her hair fell in long, glossy waves down her back, always styled, always intentional, never out of place. She was slim, but not fragile, with a confident posture that leaned slightly forward when she spoke, as if she was always stepping into someone's space just enough to feel close. Her smile was her strongest weapon, bright, warm, calculated. Chloe worked as a client relations manager at a luxury wellness spa downtown. She had spent years perfecting one skill, making people feel seen, even when she wasn't truly looking at them. It came from her childhood. Growing up with a mother who moved from relationship to relationship, Chloe had learned early that attention was currency. If you knew how to speak the right words at the right time, you could make people choose you. Brian didn't stand a chance. The first time she touched his arm, it was light, accidental, or at least it felt that way. "You look like someone who carries too much," she said softly. Brian laughed it off at first, but no one had said that to him in years. Not Monica, not anymore. With Monica, conversations had become short, functional, centered around schedules, medication, timing, responsibility. With Chloe, everything felt easy. "An sungdang do kein fukhun," she told him one evening, her voice lowered just enough to feel personal. "You deserve to come home and feel peace, not pressure." Brian didn't argue, because a part of him had already been thinking the same thing, or at least, he thought he had. What he didn't realize was that he had never actually stayed long enough at home to understand what Monica was holding together. He only saw the version of her that remained after everything else had taken from her. Tired, quiet, distant. So when Chloe laughed at his jokes, when she leaned in to listen, when she remembered small things he said and repeated them back later, it felt like something he had been missing. It felt like love. But it wasn't love. It was contrast. One night, Brian sat in his car outside the house longer than usual. The engine still running, the lights still on. Inside, he knew exactly what waited for him. A dim kitchen, a chart on the fridge, the faint sound of the air purifier, and Monica. moving through the house like she always did, efficient, silent, not looking at him the way Chloe did, not smiling the way Chloe did, and for the first time, he didn't want to go inside. That was the moment everything shifted. Days later, he stopped coming home early. Then he stopped coming home on time. Then he stopped explaining. Monica noticed. Of course she did. She noticed everything. The way his shoes stayed cleaner, the way his shirts smelled different, the way his phone faced down more often than usual. She noticed, but she didn't ask, because asking required energy, and energy was something she didn't have left for uncertainty. Instead, she adjusted. She always did. She extended her schedule, moved things around, covered the gaps, just like she had done for everything else. But this time, it wasn't something she could fix. One evening, the rain returned. He came home earlier than expected, but he wasn't alone. Chloe stood beside him in the doorway. She wore a fitted cream-colored dress that hugged her waist and fell smoothly to her knees. Her heels clicked softly against the floor as she stepped in, her eyes moving quickly around the house, taking everything in. Not admiring, assessing. She smelled like something floral and expensive, a scent that didn't belong in a house that smelled like medication and routine. Monica stood in the kitchen, still, calm, watching. Brian cleared his throat. "This doesn't have to be difficult," he said. That sentence told Monica everything. He had rehearsed this. He had prepared himself. He had already decided. "You've changed," he continued. "You're always tired, always busy, always somewhere else." His voice softened slightly, but not enough to make it kind. "Em trở nên quá nặng nề." He looked at Chloe, then back at Monica. "I want a divorce." The words didn't explode. They landed quietly, like something that had already been true long before it was spoken. Chloe stepped closer to him. Her fingers slid into his hand naturally, possessively. She didn't look nervous. She looked certain. "I know this is hard for you," Chloe said gently, her voice smooth, almost sweet enough to feel artificial. "But Brian deserves to be happy." Monica looked at her, really looked this time, at the perfect hair, the controlled smile, the confidence that came from believing she was stepping into something better. Monica didn't feel anger, not yet. She felt something else, clarity. Brian was watching her now, waiting, expecting a reaction. Tears, shouting, something emotional that would justify his decision. But Monica didn't give him that. She simply placed the knife down on the counter, wiped her hands slowly on a towel, and walked toward them. Every step measured, every movement controlled. Inside her chest, something finally went quiet. Not broken, just done. "You think I'm the problem," she said, her voice steady, low, unshaken. Brian frowned slightly. "That's not what I said," but it was exactly what he meant. Monica nodded once, then glanced at Chloe again, and for the first time, there was something almost like pity in her eyes. Not for Brian, for Chloe, because Chloe thought she was walking into a life. She had no idea she was stepping into a system. And systems don't forgive people who don't understand them. Monica turned back toward the kitchen, reaching for something neither of them noticed yet. And in that moment, without raising her voice, without breaking down, without asking him to stay, she made a decision Brian would not understand until it was far too late. The moment she stopped explaining was the moment he finally had to face what he had never tried to understand. The room felt different, not louder, not more tense, just exposed. Monica didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice, didn't ask questions, didn't fight for anything. And that unsettled Brian more than anger ever could, because anger meant attachment. Silence meant something had already ended. Chloe shifted slightly beside him, her fingers still intertwined with his, but her grip tightened just a little. For the first time since stepping into the house, something about the energy in the room didn't feel like control anymore. It felt like uncertainty. Monica turned away from them, not in defeat, in decision. She walked toward the hallway closet, her steps steady, measured, like someone who had already run this moment through her mind long before it arrived. Inside, her chest was no longer heavy. It was clear. That clarity came from something deeper than pain. It came from understanding that she had already given everything she could, and there was nothing left to prove. She reached into the closet and pulled out a thick folder, dark blue, edges slightly worn, the kind of wear that didn't come from time, but from constant use. She carried it back into the room and placed it on the table. The sound was louder than it should have been, a sharp, flat crack. Chloe flinched. Brian didn't move. "What is that?" he asked. Monica didn't answer immediately. Instead, she opened the folder. Page after page, neat handwriting, color-coded lines, margins filled with notes. She turned it so both of them could see. "Everything you think is simple," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, but underneath it was something that made the air feel heavier. She tapped the first page. 7 medications, every day. Her finger moved down the chart. 3 time windows. She flipped the page. Food restrictions. Another page. Doctor schedules, 6 months ahead. Another. Pharmacy contacts, insurance approvals, emergency notes. She paused, then lifted one page slightly. "And this," her eyes flicked briefly toward Brian, "is every reaction your mother has ever had to anything I've given her." The room went quiet. Not the quiet of peace, the quiet of realization beginning to form, but not fully understood yet. Chloe leaned forward slightly. At first, she tried to read it like it was just information, but it wasn't information. It was pattern, system, weight. Her eyes slowed, then stopped. "Wait," she said softly. "You wrote all of this?" Monica didn't look at her. "Yes." Chloe blinked. Her confidence didn't disappear, but it shifted, just a little. Brian exhaled slowly. "You're making this sound more complicated than it is." The words came out automatically, defensive, familiar. Monica looked at him then, and for the first time, there was no softness left in her eyes, no patience, no effort to make him understand gently, only truth. "Angi em lat lung." She took a step closer, her voice dropped, steady, controlled. "Hey em ti qua met des yu zang." The words didn't hit like a shout. They landed like something undeniable, something that had always been there, just never said out loud. Brian opened his mouth, then closed it, because for a split second he saw it, not clearly, but enough to feel uncomfortable, enough to feel wrong, but not enough to admit it. Chloe shifted again, her posture no longer relaxed. "What she's saying is just organization," she said, trying to reframe it. "I can learn that." Monica turned her head slightly, and this time she looked directly at Chloe, not with anger, with something far more unsettling: clarity. "You can learn the chart," Monica said, a small pause, "but you can't learn 3 years of noticing." Chloe's lips parted slightly. No response came out, because deep down, she understood the difference. Monica reached into the folder again, pulled out a smaller stack of receipts, folded, worn. She placed them beside the chart. "Hai nam qua." Her voice didn't change, didn't rise. "Tien dio chi cho me ang la zo em ta." Brian froze. What? It wasn't anger, it was confusion, because that reality didn't match the version of life he had been telling himself. "My business," he started. Monica cut him off. "You said your business was handling it." A beat. It wasn't. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Chloe looked between them. The shift in her expression was subtle, but real. This wasn't the life she had imagined stepping into. This wasn't just a relationship. It was responsibility, burden, commitment that didn't look romantic under soft lighting. Brian ran a hand over his face, trying to process, trying to catch up to something that had been happening right in front of him for years. But Monica was already done waiting for him to understand. She stepped back, closed the folder, not abruptly, carefully, like something that had served its purpose. Then she turned, walked toward the bedroom. Chloe watched her go, something in her chest tightening, but she didn't know why yet. A few minutes later, Monica returned, a suitcase in her hand. Not large, not dramatic, just enough. Brian straightened slightly. "Wait!" But the word came too late, because this wasn't a decision made in the moment. This was something that had been forming, quietly, for a long time. Monica stopped near the door, her hand resting lightly on the handle. She didn't turn back immediately, and when she did, her face was calm. Not broken, not angry, free. "You don't need to understand tonight," she said. A pause. "You will." She opened the door. The rain outside hadn't stopped. Cold air slipped into the house. Then she stepped out, closed the door behind her, firm, final. And for the first time in 3 years, the house was left without the one person who knew how to keep it running. Brian stood there, the folder still on the table, the chart still open, the system still intact. For now. But something inside it had already begun to break, and neither he nor the woman standing next to him was ready for what would happen next. On the 21st day after Monica walked out, Evelyn sat alone in her chair, fully dressed, waiting for a ride that never came. And for the first time in years, no one in that house knew what to do next. The first week felt manageable. Chloe moved through the house with confidence that hadn't yet been tested. She woke up later than Monica ever had, sunlight already spilling through the curtains before she stepped into the kitchen barefoot, wrapped in a silk robe that brushed softly against her legs. She still looked composed, her hair tied loosely, her face fresh, the scent of her perfume lingering faintly in the air, as if the house itself needed to adjust to her presence. She opened the refrigerator, saw the chart, 3 colors, blue, red, green. She smiled slightly. "I can handle this," she said under her breath. To her, it looked like organization. To her, it looked like something she could learn. And for a few days, nothing went wrong. Because systems don't collapse immediately, they fail slowly. The second week was when the cracks began. It started small. An afternoon meal. Chloe prepared chicken with a creamy sauce, carefully plated, even garnished. It looked perfect. It smelled perfect. It felt like effort. Evelyn took one bite, paused. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "There's cream in this," she said. Chloe smiled politely. "Just a little. It's healthy." Evelyn didn't argue. She finished a few more bites, and later that night, the pain came, sharp, lingering, the kind Monica had learned to avoid months ago. Chloe didn't connect it immediately because she didn't know what to look for. The next day, she misread the chart. Blue, red, green. Simple. Except it wasn't. She gave the medication late, just 15 minutes. It didn't seem like much, but Evelyn felt it. Her mood shifted. Her body reacted. The rhythm Monica had built was already breaking. By the third mistake, Chloe stopped trusting the chart. And when you stop trusting the system, you start guessing. That was when things became dangerous. "Where's the blood pressure monitor?" Evelyn asked one morning. Chloe froze. "The what?" Evelyn looked at her, long, sharp. "The digital monitor, the one used every morning." Chloe opened drawers, cabinets, looked under the sink. Nothing, because she wasn't looking where Monica had always kept it. Not because it was hidden, but because she didn't think like Monica. Brian noticed the tension, but not the cause. He saw Chloe trying, saw her moving around the kitchen, adjusting things, making effort, and to him, that was enough, because effort was visible, systems were not. By the third week, everything unraveled. The kitchen was no longer quiet. It was cluttered, dishes left overnight, medication containers misplaced. The chart still hung on the refrigerator, but slightly tilted. The magnet had shifted. The paper curled at the edges. Small signs, but they meant everything. That morning, Evelyn sat in her chair wearing her navy cardigan, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She had been ready since 9:15. Her appointment was at 10 o'clock. Monica had never been late, not once. At 9:40, Evelyn glanced at the clock. At 9:55, she picked up the phone. Brian didn't answer. He was in a meeting. Late again. His third late arrival that week. At work, the pressure had started building. Marcus Reed, his regional manager, a tall black man in his 40s with a clean-cut appearance and a reputation for discipline, stood across the conference table with a look Brian had never seen directed at him before. Marcus had built his career from nothing, growing up in a strict household where excuses were not tolerated, and it showed in the way he managed people. He valued consistency above everything. "You've been off," Marcus said flatly. Brian shifted slightly. "I've had things at home." Marcus raised a hand. "We all do." Silence. "You missed the Carter deal." Brian's jaw tightened. "That deal was supposed to close last week." "I know." "Do you?" Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you stopped showing up." The words landed harder than Brian expected, not because they were unfair, because they were accurate. Back at the house, 10:15. Evelyn was still waiting. Chloe stood in the kitchen, her phone in her hand, panic beginning to replace confidence. "I thought you had it," she said when Brian finally called back. "I thought you had it," he replied. Silence, the kind that reveals everything. Evelyn lowered the phone slowly. Her expression didn't break, but something inside her shifted. 3 years, never once left waiting. And now, 21 days, and everything was already different. That evening, Brian came home exhausted, not physically, mentally. The house didn't feel like before. It wasn't peaceful. It was unstable, unpredictable. He opened the refrigerator. The chart was still there, but it didn't feel like guidance anymore. It felt like something he didn't understand. He stared at the first line. 5:45 a.m., water not cold, wait 30 minutes. He frowned slightly. Had it always been that specific? He didn't know, because he had never needed to know. And now, he did. But it was already too late, because systems don't fail loudly at first. They fail quietly, until one day, they don't hold anymore. And as Brian stood there, in a house that no longer ran the way it used to, with a woman who was trying but didn't know how, and a mother who was watching everything, he felt something unfamiliar. Not guilt, not yet. Loss, the kind you don't recognize until everything starts slipping. And this was only the beginning. By the time he realized what he had lost, the house was already empty in all the ways that mattered. It was late when Brian pushed the door open. No light in the kitchen, no soft hum of movement, no quiet rhythm holding things together. Just stillness, the kind that didn't feel peaceful, the kind that felt wrong. "Chloe?" he called out. No answer. He stepped inside slowly, his shoes echoing faintly against the floor. The air felt different, not just quiet, abandoned. He walked into the kitchen, and that was when he saw it. A single piece of paper on the counter, folded, placed carefully, too carefully. He picked it up, unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, confident, unapologetic. "I didn't sign up for this life. I wanted a relationship, not a hospital. I'm leaving." No name, no explanation, no hesitation. Brian stared at the words for a long moment, then lowered the paper slowly. Something inside him didn't break. It shifted, because deep down, he understood. Chloe hadn't failed. She had simply refused to carry something that was never hers to begin with. He turned his head slightly and really looked at the kitchen. Not the way he used to, not as a place that just worked, but as something that now clearly didn't. Dishes stacked unevenly in the sink, half-washed, a cabinet door left open, groceries still in bags on the counter, and on the refrigerator, the chart, still there, still precise, still waiting to be followed. But now, no one was following it. Brian stepped closer. The magnet had slipped slightly, the paper curled at the edges. Small details, but he noticed them now, because there was no one left to hide them. He opened the refrigerator. Rows of supplements, some unopened, some already expired. He checked one bottle, 6 days past date. He closed the door slowly. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Then his eyes returned to the chart. For the first time, He actually read it. Not glanced, not assumed, read. 5:45 a.m. Medication. Water not cold. Wait 30 minutes before food. 6:30 p.m. Warm room before evening dose. Half banana, not whole. Notes in the margins. Tiny handwriting. Adjustments. Observations. Patterns. 3 years. Written down line by line. Brian ran his fingers over the paper, as if touching it would somehow make it easier to understand. But it didn't, because the problem wasn't the chart. The problem was everything behind it. Every morning, Monica woke up before him. Every night, she stayed awake after him. Every decision she made that he never even knew existed. He swallowed slowly, a thought forming, uncomfortable, heavy. Everything worked because she made it work. Not because it was easy, not because it was natural, but because she was there. And now, she wasn't. From the hallway, a faint sound broke his focus. Evelyn. Brian walked toward the room, slower this time, more aware. His mother sat in her chair, wrapped in her cardigan, her posture still upright but her eyes sharper than before. She didn't look surprised. She looked confirmed. She left, Brian said quietly. Evelyn didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked past him, toward the kitchen, toward the place Monica used to stand. I knew she would, Evelyn said. Her voice was calm, but not cold. Certain. Brian frowned slightly. You knew? Evelyn turned her gaze back to him. Yes, a pause. Because no one can carry that much, forever. The words landed deeper than anything Chloe had said, because they came from someone who had watched it happen, not imagined it. Brian stepped closer. I can fix this, he said quickly. I just need to understand it better. Evelyn's expression didn't change. Understand? She repeated the words slowly, then shook her head slightly. You didn't even look at it, for 3 years. Silence. Brian had no answer, because she was right. Evelyn leaned back slightly in her chair, her movements slower now, more deliberate. Your father, she began, her voice shifting slightly, softer but more distant. He wasn't perfect. Brian looked at her, listening. But when things were heavy, he stayed. A pause. He didn't look for something easier. Brian looked down, his jaw tightened slightly, not in anger, in recognition. Because this wasn't about Chloe anymore. It wasn't even about Monica. It was about him, about what he had chosen, and what that choice revealed. Evelyn's voice cut through his thoughts again. You thought you were replacing a person. She looked at him directly. You replaced the one thing holding everything together. The sentence didn't echo. It settled, heavy, permanent. Brian turned slightly, looking back toward the kitchen, the chart, the mess, the silence. And for the first time, he didn't feel in control. He didn't feel confident. He didn't feel certain about anything. He felt unprepared, because now everything that had once been invisible was his responsibility, and he had no idea where to start. He walked back into the kitchen slowly, picked up the chart again, held it tighter this time, like something fragile, something important, something he should have valued long before this moment. Outside, the night stretched on, quiet, unforgiving, and inside that house, without Monica, nothing felt stable anymore. And Brian was about to learn that understanding something too late doesn't make it easier to carry. 6 months after she walked away, the woman he called cold was living a life so calm it almost felt unreal, and the quiet that once meant exhaustion had become something else entirely. Morning light filled Monica's apartment, not harsh, not dim, just steady, the kind of light that didn't demand anything from her. Her place was small, 1 bedroom, clean lines, minimal furniture, but everything inside it had intention. A chair placed near the window where sunlight moved slowly across the floor by 7 a.m., a kettle that clicked softly when the water reached the right temperature, a shelf with neatly arranged folders that had nothing to do with medication and everything to do with her future. Monica Carter sat at the table, holding a cup of tea between her hands. She didn't rush. She didn't check a clock. She didn't listen for movement in another room. She simply existed. Her hair was different now, still natural, but styled in soft, defined curls that framed her face instead of being pulled back into something purely functional. Her posture hadn't changed, still strong, still upright, but it no longer looked like discipline under pressure. It looked like balance. Her face carried something new. Not softness, not exactly. Clarity. The kind that comes when you stop giving parts of yourself away just to keep things stable. She lifted the cup slightly, taking a measured sip. Exactly the right temperature. Not because someone else needed it, because she did. And that difference changed everything. Her phone buzzed lightly on the table. A message. Then another. Work. Monica reached for it calmly. No urgency, no tension, just focus. 6 months ago, she had been an employee people relied on. Now, she was the one they reported to. Her promotion had not come easily, but it had come quickly, because everything she had spent years doing silently translated perfectly into leadership. Organization, pattern recognition, crisis control, decision-making under pressure. At the office, people had started noticing it almost immediately. Not just her work, her presence. The way she entered a room and everything seemed to settle. The way she spoke, clear, precise, never wasting words. The way she listened, actually listened, before responding. That was something most people didn't know how to do, especially under stress, especially when things started breaking. But Monica had lived in that space for years, and now it was her advantage. At 9 a.m., she stepped into the office. Glass walls, open layout, the quiet hum of productivity filling the space. People greeted her differently now, not casually, with respect. A few nodded. One stood slightly straighter, because they knew, if something went wrong, Monica would fix it. Not loudly, not dramatically, but effectively. "Morning, Monica," a voice called out. She turned slightly. Daniel Brooks, mid-30s, lean build, dark skin, neatly groomed beard, always dressed in sharp tailored suits that reflected his attention to detail. He was a senior analyst, known for being meticulous but guarded. Daniel didn't trust easily. He had grown up in a household where stability was temporary, where things could fall apart overnight, and it had made him cautious with people. But with Monica, there was something different. Not attraction, not yet. Respect. Genuine. He had watched her handle situations others avoided, watched her step into chaos and bring structure to it, watched her remain calm when others panicked. "Morning," she replied, her voice steady, grounded. Daniel hesitated for a second, then added, "You handled that client situation yesterday, better than anyone else would have." Monica nodded slightly. "Thank you." No overreaction, no deflection, just acknowledgement. Daniel studied her for a brief moment. There was something about her that didn't match what most people expected. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, and somehow that made her more impressive than anyone else in the room. Across the office, a younger employee struggled with a report, papers scattered across her desk. Monica noticed it immediately. Of course she did. She always noticed. She walked over, didn't ask what was wrong. She already knew. She adjusted one page, moved another, reordered the sequence. "Start here," she said quietly. The employee blinked, then nodded quickly, relieved. Monica stepped away. No need for credit, no need for attention, because that wasn't why she did it. Back at her desk, she sat down and opened her laptop. Outside the window, the city moved. Cars, people, noise. But inside, everything felt controlled. Not forced, not held together by exhaustion, just stable. For the first time in years, Monica wasn't managing survival. She was building something for herself. And that difference was bigger than anything she had lost. She paused for a brief second, her fingers resting lightly on the keyboard, not thinking about Brian, not thinking about the house, not thinking about what used to be, because she didn't need to anymore. She had already walked through that version of her life and left it exactly where it belonged, behind her. But somewhere else, in a house that no longer felt like home, The consequences of that absence were still unfolding, and Brian was only beginning to understand that losing her wasn't the hardest part. Living without everything she held together was. The day the call came, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt quiet. Monica was standing by her window, sunlight stretching across the floor in a slow, golden line that reached her feet exactly when she expected it to. She noticed things like that now. Not because she had to, but because she could. Her apartment was still. No alarms, no schedules taped to refrigerators, no footsteps in the hallway that demanded her attention. Just space, and herself inside it. Her phone buzzed softly against the table. She glanced down. The name on the screen made her pause. Evelyn Carter. For a moment, Monica didn't move. Not out of fear, not out of hesitation, just recognition of everything that name used to mean. She picked up the phone, answered. Hello? There was a slight delay on the other end, then a breath, not steady, not controlled. And then Evelyn's voice came through, softer than Monica had ever heard it before. Monica. Another pause, and then, quietly, my son didn't deserve you. The words didn't land like an apology. They landed like truth, stripped down, unprotected, real. Monica didn't respond immediately, not because she didn't hear it, but because she had already processed it, long before this moment. 6 months ago, those words might have broken something inside her. Now, they didn't. She leaned slightly against the window, her eyes resting on the city outside. I know, she said gently. No bitterness, no anger, just acceptance. On the other end of the call, Evelyn exhaled slowly. I saw everything you did, she continued, her voice steadier now, but still carrying something fragile underneath. Every morning, every night, every detail. A pause. I didn't say it then, but I saw it. Monica closed her eyes for a brief second, not to hold back emotion, but to acknowledge something that finally arrived, too late to change anything, but still real. Thank you, she said, and she meant it, because recognition, even delayed, still had weight. They spoke for a few minutes more, about Evelyn's condition, about the adjustments Brian was trying to make, about how things were not the same. They both knew that already. When the call ended, Monica set her phone down. The room felt exactly the same as before, calm, balanced, unchanged. Because her peace was no longer dependent on anyone else's understanding. She walked back to the table, picked up her tea, still warm, still perfect. She took a slow sip, and for the first time in years, there was no second thought behind it. No checklist, no next task waiting, just the moment. Across the city, Brian stood in the same kitchen, the chart still on the refrigerator, the house still functioning, but only barely. He had learned the times, memorized the steps, but something was still missing, because following instructions was not the same as understanding responsibility. He looked at the chart again, not with frustration, with something heavier now. Respect. Too late. He reached out, adjusted the paper slightly, as if keeping it straight could somehow hold everything else together. But it couldn't, because the thing that made it work was never the chart. It was the person behind it. And she was gone. Back in her apartment, Monica moved through her space slowly, not out of exhaustion, out of choice. Every step, every movement belonged to her now. She paused by the window again, looked at the light, at the city, at a life that no longer needed her to sacrifice herself just to keep it stable. And in that moment, she didn't feel like she had lost anything. She felt like she had finally stopped carrying something that was never meant to be carried alone. People think love is about sweet words. It's not. Real love is waking up at 5:45 in the morning, doing the right thing every single day without being asked, without being thanked, without being seen. And the moment you stop doing that, that's when they finally realize you were the one holding everything together. Have you ever been the one who who kept everything running quietly while everyone else thought it was easy? Comment, "I was her," if you understand that feeling.